Hello, well my purpose in this video is to give you a very quick crash course on why you should be super excited about the news that Taika Waititi is going to write and direct an adaptation of The Incal. Even if you don't know anything about it, and you probably don't. The Incal is a comic book, and yes, we don't lack for comic book movies these days, but unlike most, it's the product of not just one but two geniuses. Genius may be the most overused word in entertainment, but I think it actually applies here. And then meanwhile, you throw in a third, like Taika Waititi, who I think is a genius at what he does. I mean, I think he's a truly brilliant filmmaker, a really gifted and original storyteller. Now, I should be cautious because I have been wrong in the past, as others have been, oh so terribly wrong, when taking in an announcement about a talented creator taking on a beloved property. And to see a Rise of Skywalker / Star Wars sequel trilogy level backlash from fandom hit a Incal movie would hurt my soul. Not that I'm arguing for fan service, far from it. In fact, I think that was one of the problems with the recent Star Wars movies. But let's get back to the subject at hand. I'm very excited about this announcement. It absolutely gave me chills. And let's go back to our three brilliant collaborators. First and foremost, Alejandro Jodorowsky, who obviously created the Incal story, and it's a very Jodorowsky-esque story through and through. Here's a scene from Dance of Reality. He's a brilliant filmmaker, kind of the father of cult cinema, often called the father of the midnight movie. He's crazy, as you can tell. I mean, he really is madcap. You won't find a more fearless creator. You really won't. In his 90s, he still comes off as more intense and creative than most people in their prime. Here's a still from El Topo, which is his first movie. This was John Lennon's favorite movie. And just look at how striking that image is and think for a second about how much it says about us and our fascination with violence and entertainment, right? He made a Western, and, how many Westerns give you a shot like this? That's a lot of fake blood. But anyway, one more image from El Topo. A gunslinger that's a combination of two men, one armless and one legless. So yeah, this is not an unoriginal storyteller or visual artist. His masterpiece is generally considered to be The Holy Mountain. Stunning visuals again. He can really create something that sticks in your mind visually and as a storyteller. Here he is way later in life. That was him in black in the last scene, but way later in life. Anyway, here he is in Endless Poetry. As part of that movie, he talks to his younger self. That's part of that sequence, and it's brilliant. But I mean, look at this here. He conceived of and directed this shot when he was in his 90s, maybe late 80s. So pretty amazing stuff. But, this looks everything you've seen so far, very art house, and his stuff is like that. But his content often is just ridiculous as well. He has really silly comic and sometimes just cornball visuals and devices, and we'll return to that. But there's creator number one, Jodorowsky. So he collaborated with Moebius, a legendary French graphic artist whose real name was Jean Giraud. Here's his self-portrait, love that, and here he is. He is sadly no longer with us. But he created the visuals for the Incal, and if there's an artist who evokes mysterious fantasy worlds better than him, I haven't seen it. He influenced so many artists that worked on film and comic books and just whatever else. I love how his work, it's just really evocative, you feel there's a fully fleshed out, complex world, a fantasy world, behind each one of his images, whether or not that was the case. And you might or might not know that the way these two got together was on the failed Dune adaptation that Jodorowsky tried to make famously, documented so well in the film Jodorowsky's Dune by Frank Pavich. And, it's the story of these incredible talents, plus a lot of others that I'm just not going to get into. That's more of a tangent. Go watch the documentary. But anyway, trying to make a commercial film that was probably too creative and too weird to get made. It's often called the greatest movie never made. Now, who knows how it would have turned out, but regardless, that failed effort was transformed by Jodorowsky into The Incal. Jodorowsky does not know the meaning of the word quit. He's a very metaphysical guy. He's kind of a modern guru. He has his own philosophy and really therapeutic method called psychomagic. So he took all of these concepts he was planning on putting into his Dune adaptation and instead created an original story and told Moebius, let's do it in comic book form. Well, that comic, obviously, The Incal turned out to be one of the best-selling and most influential in European history, something truly beloved by many of us in its own right, and just what a great story too, right, of how this came about. And it's everything you would expect given the two creators. It's beautiful visually, it's bizarre narratively, and it's unforgettable. It's also incredibly ambitious. Do you remember The Watchmen? One of the greatest comic books ever? Well, until it finally was filmed, with mixed results, but I liked it. Anyway, it was considered the king of unfilmable properties. Just too broad in scope, too ambitious. Well, I'm here to tell you, The Incal makes adapting The Watchmen seem like a freshman film project that could be done over a weekend. And I'm going to show you glimpses of why, but first, who in the world would actually come out of the blue, because they really kept a secret, and take on this project? I don't know how they managed to keep this a secret. I mean, the project itself, much less the fact that they had a Oscar-winning writer and director taking the helm. And by the way, I was positively freaking out seeing scenes like this during the announcement video and saying to myself, with no warning whatsoever, like I hadn't heard a whisper of this project, much less his involvement. Like, is that Taika Waititi, my current favorite filmmaker? And of course it was, so let's look at what he's embarking upon. A movie that's going to need massive, sprawling, futuristic cityscapes. This real dirty, gritty, futuristic kind of a cityscape. Well, check. He's been there. Did that with Thor Ragnarok. There's a massive, like, planet-sized garbage dump, by the way. See all the rats in the Incal? And, I mean, just funny enough, kind of a coincidence. Yeah, Taika Waititi has done a giant sci-fi junkyard. The comic book is populated with a dizzying array of really strange aliens and human or humanoid background characters, as seen here, and yeah, been there, done that as well. And it's not just that Taika has done some of these telltale things from the Incal before, it's that he did them so well, and with a similar sensibility, I would say. In the comic book, you get a lot of this really ridiculous day-glow aristocracy, and again, just a confluence, but, or maybe Jung would say a synchronicity, a meaningful coincidence. But once again, I can find an analogous example, right? So here's some more from the comic just to give you an idea. I mean, it really is a sprawling story. It takes place across an entire galaxy with all kinds of worlds and people and aliens. And the movie fan that really knows his or her stuff might say, I can think of a movie that plays in the same space, occupies the same kind of Venn diagram that you're talking about here. And you're right, The Fifth Element. And that is a movie that I do like, despite it being an uncredited ripoff of, you guessed it, how'd you ever guess it, The Incal. The Fifth Element, the Fifth Essence, see that there? Right below the word Moebius. Yeah, not a coincidence. And there was a whole lawsuit about this, and it's complicated, and Moebius did play a part, or at least a preliminary part in The Fifth Element, but leaving all that aside, The Fifth Element, which I do, again, love, and love it's wonderfully weird, it only scratches the surface of what The Incal does. I mean, none of the metaphysical components which are so crucial to Jodorowsky's storytelling. But it is definitely more than that. I'm going to show you every one of the covers. So I have the collection. This is my actual collection when you see all these images here. But love everything about it. Here, notice Taika Waititi kind of coloring with the same palette, if you will. There's a lot of opulent palaces and things like that in the comic, and yeah, he happens to have done that kind of thing as well. But on the other hand, there's so much like monsters and phantasmagoria aspects. The previously mentioned spirituality, stuff that Taika Waititi has not taken on in his movies thus far. So there's a lot for him to challenge himself with, depending on what he chooses to include in the movie. And there are a lot of zoomorphic human-animal hybrid type creatures, like if you look on the left. Meanwhile, see the aristocratic figure with the mohawk on the right? Another stylistic coincidence, but, how similar is that to the look here with Jeff Goldblum? It really is that same type of over-the-top, ostentatious, almost like a, Louis XVI, Marie Antoinette, but in space kind of aristocracy. But back to the uncharted territory for the movie maker here. I mean, there's just all kinds of things. How about, Ocean Planet with these giant jellyfish creatures. God, I didn't even get into the techno priests, who are a big player in this, with their floating psycho abdomens, as they're called, or the Emperor S, which is the kind of conjoined twin ruler of the galaxy. And trust me, you still only heard of a glimpse of the weirdness, the wonderful weirdness of this tale. Jodorowsky has a very, he's Chilean, he has a very European, un-American sensibility about nudity. I think they're going to have to pull the reins back on that. The Incal, as you know, is a sci-fi epic, so yeah, there are scenes in space. Here's a scene from Thor Ragnarok. And, just again, a bit of a dry run. Funny enough for a guy who's only ever done one sci-fi movie, too. But in that one, I think you'll agree with me, there's kind of a visual rhyming, if you will. Like, they paint in similar colors in similar ways. When Thor Ragnarok came out, I mean, it blew everybody away, or most people, because it was so different visually and stylistically from typical superhero movies. And not just that, but narratively, there's a lot of humor, right? A lot of ridiculousness. But you look at his other movies, there's definitely character and feeling. If you've never seen Hunt for the Willow People, you should. A hip-hop obsessed orphan and a crusty loner and grieving man become New Zealand's most wanted criminals. It's funny and absurd, yet affecting. I think that's the nexus that Taika Waititi does so well, the nexus of elements. Jojo Rabbit, which, Oscar-winning, which I think is an absolute masterpiece. It also strikes that same balance, so who better, really? I mean, doesn't this remind you of what I said about Jodorowsky's art earlier on? Who better than the guy crazy enough to play Hitler in a drama/comedy? A guy who's made great low-budget, character-driven, quirky films, but also happens to have made a great comic book movie. Like, you can't do any better for a candidate to take on translating this man's vision. Yeah, that's Jodorowsky in The Holy Mountain. From one eccentric to another, and let's not forget Moebius, right? So, Taika has that visual template to work with. Does any of what I've said so far mean the movie is definitely going to be good? Well, no. A lot of people wonder to this day, would Dune have been a disaster, Jodorowsky's Dune? Well, maybe. We'll never know, but we are going to know how this movie turns out, and I'm really excited. Let's be honest, there's at least a chance this could be the next Battlefield Earth. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think there's too much talent involved from the past and the present, the three brilliant creators that we talked about. And that's why I think this guy here is as well positioned as anybody could be to make this movie work. And it just says so much about him that he's willing to take this on. He doesn't need this. It's a huge risk, from a business perspective, and he doesn't need it. He's coming off an Oscar-winning movie and a hit TV show. He doesn't care. And that's the kind of person I want making the Incal movie. And this is the kind of project I want movie studios to be willing to back. Well, there's my rant. We got a long wait in store for us, but it'll be a fun one. Hey, if you're on Twitter, follow Incal Movie Fan Club, because that's my account, one that I spun up to try to push out news about the movie and follow its progress. Thanks a lot.